Let's go. Today I'm talking about the 2007 Rob Zombie Halloween remake. As always, this review is going to be spoiler free, so if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe to this channel and like the video. So with this reboot, Rob Zombie, the musician, filmmaker extraordinaire, brings his unique sensibilities to the Halloween franchise. I'm not a fan of Rob Zombie. As a director, he's competent and stylish enough, if a little derivative sometimes, but it's usually the content of his movies that I object to. I've seen a couple of his movies, so I'm somewhat familiar with the guy, and I can recognize his touch all over this movie. As far as the plot goes, the movie's oddly structured. The second half of the movie is just basically a redo of John Carpenter's original, but in the first half, Rob Zombie attempts to tell an origin story for Michael Myers, where young Michael is growing up in a white trash household and is driven to murder by his circumstances and his innate psychopathic tendencies. Before I start complaining, I do want to call out one thing that I think the movie gets right, and that is casting. The kid they cast to play young Michael is good at acting creepy, and the absolute hulk of a man that they cast to play adult Michael is really intimidating just based on the fact that he towers over like everyone in this cast. Side note, they also finally got the mask right, so I'm not laughing at Michael's appearance throughout the movie. Horror legend Brad Dourif also shows up and does a great job, of course. And I think casting Malcolm McDowell as Loomis was a really good idea. He is every bit as good as Donald Pleasence from the original, so good job on the casting. But with that out of the way, let's get into the movie. Like I said, the first half of the movie follows young Michael's story. Rob Zombie takes a stab at explaining why Michael is evil here, and I gotta say, he does a better job of it than part 6 at least, but that's a pretty low bar to clear. As an origin story for the boogeyman, it doesn't really work. There's nothing at all unexpected here, nothing that makes me think deeper about the nature of evil or anything like that. It's just like, oh, Michael had a rough childhood, okay. There are so many better ways they could have played this stuff, but because Rob Zombie has this fetish about depraved hillbillies, we have to endure 20 minutes of F-bombs and nasty hypersexual trailer park dialogue to set up young Michael's story. Like seriously, this guy gets off on this stuff. Most of his movies prominently feature these kind of unlikable, profane, white trash types, and it gets very annoying very fast. And like I talked about when I reviewed Gaspar Noé's movie Climax, there's no easier way to turn me against a movie than to have these kind of crude, degenerate characters talking in disgusting, profane ways. So this stuff is pretty unbearable, and also out of place, because Haddonfield is supposed to be an average suburban town, not the kind of place where you'd expect to find characters like these. Another prominent element of Rob Zombie's work is violence. Most of his movies feature extreme brutality and gore, and while this movie isn't quite as bad as some of his other work, it's certainly much more violent than any Halloween movie before it. And honestly, I don't like it. Nothing is added by showing the knife slicing across the throat and the blood spurting out. I'll take the subtle suspense work of the original over this any day. And that's basically going to be my review for this entire movie. Nothing that Rob Zombie does here is better than the original. When he's adding to the story, I'm rejecting everything that he's showing me, and when he's redoing the original, almost nothing is as good as the original. So this movie is basically pointless. But I'll finish walking through it anyway. The stuff in the sanitarium is at best a missed opportunity. I would have liked to see more of Michael becoming evil and Loomis coming to fear him, but that part of the movie is so poorly done that I get absolutely nothing new out of it. The second half is basically just a speed run through the original, which kills all the suspense that the original had. There's no time for lingering shots and Michael creeping around in the background, because we gotta get to the kills pretty quick, and once we do, they're of course more violent, more gory, and more exploitative. It's the exact same story, but I repeat, almost nothing here is better. Once we get to the third act, or the fourth act, I don't even know what to call it, the movie does give us a twist on the original ending, but you guessed it, I don't like it very much. This time there's a whole lot more of this Laurie running around and hiding in the rafters of the dilapidated Myers house, and none of it's particularly interesting, and then eventually the movie ends. Yeah, this is a pointless and annoying remake. It's competently made and it has a few decent elements, but mostly it's just an unlikable redo of a classic, and I recommend people stay away from it. Stick to the original, guys. In my opinion, it's a 4 out of 10.